alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to Alive After Reading. I'm your host, Tim Niederreiter, and with me today is Richard Paolinelli, a sci-fi author. Welcome to the show, Richard.
Well, thanks for having me on, Tim. It should be fun.
Well, it should be, and yeah, we're back from a brief kind of unplanned break from Sunday because we had some technical difficulties. But Richard, yeah, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and the books you write.
Well, I've been a writer in one form or another since about 1983. I started off as a freelance writer, kind of walked into a newspaper job back in the 90s and had a really good run as a newspaper writer for about a quarter of a century. And for the last 7 years, I've been writing books, mostly science fiction. And you can see the latest one right over my shoulder right there is Galen's Way. But I've been doing science fiction. I co-wrote a Western. I've got a mystery thriller series that's out. I've been doing a lot of short stories for anthologies. So I'm kind of almost a have got will travel, only just have typewriter will travel, I guess. But there's not too many areas I won't try to write in.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I appreciate a variety of things, but almost all my writing falls into sci-fi fantasy pretty. Well, it doesn't, but the subgenre is always the tricky part for me.
That's true. Yeah, my stuff kind of blends many different subgenres. So, yeah, I just kind of say science fiction is kind of my thing, but there's a big umbrella there that I kind of play in.
Right. Yeah, it's when I find combining science fiction and fantasy is trickier to market, and I'm trying to avoid doing that, even though that's kind of my true love when it comes to writing fiction.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. It can be. I mean, it can be. Some of my, it's funny. It's a couple of my books. People are trying to figure out what subcategory they fall under, and they'll ask me, and I'm like, "Don't look at me. I just call it sci-fi." There's so many different elements mixed in. You could pick one and it'd be accurate, but I don't know that that's the main thrust of it. So, yeah, I just kind of go sci-fi, and we'll go with that.
Maybe that's the trick. Maybe I should just call everything fantasy and just roll with it.
There you go.
So Richard, tell us a little bit about Galen's Way. That's your latest thing coming out, right?
Yeah. It's actually the first book in the StarQuest saga, and StarQuest was started by John C. Wright. He kind of developed it after he watched the first Star Wars movie and found it not to his liking. And I have to agree with his reasonings for that. But he wanted to get back to the space opera that was the original Star Wars trilogy. And so he sat down and he created this Bible and opened it up to other authors. He's got 4 books that he's going to be releasing probably starting at the end of this year or the beginning of next year. And his books are set in what's called the 12th age of StarQuest. I looked over what he had put together, and I found a home in what's the 4th age of StarQuest, and that's where Galen's Way is set. And where we pick up the story is we're introduced very quickly in the prologue to how the human race wound up being transplanted from the Milky Way galaxy to the Andromeda galaxy far into our future. And StarQuest actually picks up millions of years from now. So we're here where the human race still thinks they're the only species in the galaxy. They've actually forgotten they've come from Milky Way. So they just kind of think this is where we started and we're the only ones in the entire universe, kind of like we are today.
Yeah.
And where we pick up is that the different planets in the area of Andromeda that the human race is in have kind of formed a loose alliance of planets, and each planet has its own ruler, a little slightly different way of ruling each planet, but they all have a representative at the central alliance. Well, one such ruler wants to kind of undo everything and create an empire, and he has arranged to have his own daughter and some other daughters of planetary leaders kidnapped, and he hires Galen Twin to go and rescue his daughter as part of a setup so that when Galen shows up to rescue all the kidnapped princesses are killed, and they will blame it on the chancellor who's currently running the alliance, and this will trigger the war that the guy wants to put his empire into place. And of course, Galen figures out the trap, survives it, and now he's got a princess that everybody wants dead, basically, and now everybody in their corner of the galaxy is hunting them to kill them, and he's trying to figure out how to keep her alive and keep this empire from coming into being, because it will not be good if it does. So it's kind of your basic space opera, adventure, a lot of romance. We have space battles. The space battle at the end, I think people will not come away disappointed in how that thing comes to an end. But this is the first book for me in what's going to be 8 books that I've got laid out already.
So big series.
And with the other authors who are chiming in that they want to write into this, and give it about 2 or 3 years, and you could see StarQuest books all over the place. That's the hope.
Cool. Yeah, and with that kind of title, StarQuest, you've got a kind of broad umbrella you can go with there, as well as being quite on target as far as space opera, just in general.
And the fact that John wrote this Bible that covers 12 different ages that spans millions of years. I mean, you've got so much room to play with in this thing. I mean, just me hanging out in 4th age, I've got, I say I've got 8 books. I could see more just in that one little section that I'm playing. And this is a relatively small corner of John's sandbox that I'm in. You look at the entire sandbox he's built, and if we can get other authors to come in and start writing in it, who knows? This thing could rival some of the extended universe work we saw in Star Wars back in the the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And actually, and the big collaboration, if I was ever going to collaborate somehow, that's more the way I would do it. Myself, I would want to be, but I don't think I could ever do something like that myself personally, because I like to build my own setting. I like to build my own universe too much from scratch, and I can't even stick with the same setting, the same universe half the time for 2 books in a row. So it's kind of tough. Yeah.
That's going to be a challenge for me, because this is the first time in my science fiction that I've actually am going to return to the same setting that I built before, because I really don't do sequels and series in sci-fi. So, for me to get into this, I'm definitely out of my comfort zone, but I like doing that. I like getting myself out of my comfort zone and stretching myself out to see, can I go and do this? Can I be a little bit more than what I am right now? So it's a challenge for me. And it helps that I, having read everything that John set up, and buying fully into it. I mean, it's a project that I'm glad I'm a part of, and I'm hoping for the next several years it's kind of the focus of my writing life.
So you got a commitment going on here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you got but it sounds like a good place to go, honestly. It sounds, like you said, there's a lot of potential there. A lot of possibilities, very open. But it's interesting when you say it's very open. I thought that was funny, because I feel like that would constrict me, just knowing that that I have to conform to something that's going to happen down the line in future arcs or whatever.
Well, it's really not, because I wrote Galen's Way and I sent it to John's wife Jaji, who's kind of StarQuest Central for us, and I think there was really only one item that came up where she said, we're going to be doing, or John's going to be doing this in 12th Age. And if you do this here, it's in conflict. So it was an easy fix to just go, okay, we'll just adjust this way, and now we're not in conflict anymore. So, you could probably get into a lot of situations where you're contradicting, but having somebody who's kind of the central hub, I think we're going to avoid that a lot. I think she's going to be able to take a look at your basic premise, because I sent in a synopsis. And she goes, okay, John looked it over. He doesn't see where there's going to be any issues. And then I wrote the thing and sent it in. And there was one thing I had added, as you write, you kind of adding to what you're developing. And so that came up, and it was, like I said, it was real easy. It was a real easy fix. I think I had to change 3 words.
Not bad at all.
Not bad.
That's pretty simple.
Yeah. So, I mean, you could see the potential for a lot of it, but I think it's so vast what he set up. I think there's a lot of room to maneuver there. And
Yeah, you got
I
kind of a
don't
broad
think
palette to pick from.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So as long as you don't try to get specific, my rule of thumb is I'm staying out of 12th Age because that's where John's writing, and that's where basically he's got a lot of his stuff set up. So by setting up shop in 4th, I've got a lot of room to play because I can bring stuff in as long as it doesn't conflict with what's developed.
Yeah.
And so I've got some creativity there. I mean, some of the planets I've thrown in to Galen's Way, some of the technology is stuff that won't be there by the end of 4th Age, so it doesn't matter.
Well, that's another good point. You could, it could be forgotten. It could be lost, like so many other things get lost.
Because there's such a gap, even from 4th Age to 5th Age. It's not like this year is the end of 4th Age. This year, the next year is the beginning of 5th. There's a gap. And there's a I'm not going to do spoilers, but there's something
cataclysmic events. There's big events that will end the age, and then when the next age begins, who knows what lots of things can change in between, kind of thing.
And what the human race is going through in 5th Age is not what they're going to be going through in 12th.
Yeah,
there's a completely they're not going to have a very good, I think, 6th Age. I'm trying to remember off the top of it. There's an age there where the human race is not doing well. So everything that I've done in 4th will be gone and forgotten by the time we get to 7th.
Wow. That's interesting. So we're talking about almost like a vast historical kind of feeling here. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, so as long as I get the general stuff connected right, there's some specific things I can do knowing that it won't conflict because it's going to go away by the time we get to the end of 4th Age.
Yeah.
So, there's some constraints, but there's a lot of freedom.
And sometimes constraints can be actually more helpful than hurtful.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Well, it keeps you on track for one thing.
Right.
You don't go really weird. And the other thing I did with 4th is human race hasn't run into any alien species that were there in Andromeda all along. And I picked 4th because since they're not going to meet anybody for another couple of ages, I don't have to worry about creating an alien species.
Yeah.
Or dragging one in and making sure they're not too far advanced from what they are later on. So, it was just, for me, it was easy because I just have to deal with the human race in an area of space and nothing else. And it makes it a lot easier to do what I want to do with the next few books coming up.
Yeah, though aliens, I always am fascinated by. Do you enjoy writing about aliens, or do you try to steer clear of that most of the time?
I think I've only I've done 2 alien species that just off the top of my head. There's the one alien species in Escaping Infinity, and then there's one that is created. Well, it's kind of living on the Europa, the moon of Jupiter. And then when Europa is terraformed, it completely changes everything. So a lot of the species die off, but there's one species that manages to survive it. And I describe them as mini polar bears. They look like miniature polar bears, and they don't speak. They use telepathy. So that's kind of the extent as far as alien races that I go. I really kind of prefer to kind of work with the human race right now. So maybe one of these days I'll go full alien and see what I can do.
I mean, when I write fantasy, I mostly write about humans, but when I write sci-fi, I like to have an alien. I like to have weird things in there, like post-humans and aliens and things like that.
Well, I do have a AI in Galen's Way that's a pretty major character.
Okay.
And she's going to have a very interesting character arc through these books. I've already kind of let Jaji know what I was up to. And at first she's like, oh man, everybody's going to be upset. But then she looked to see what's going to happen in the next book. And she's like, but I think they're going to like where you're going with it. So
interesting. It's a little bit controversial. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
no need to spoil though. Yeah.
That's about as much of a spoiler as I want to get. But just keep an eye on Cassandra and see what her character arc does.
Okay. Yeah. And that was a little bit of teaser. So as far as your other books, though, what kind of other stuff did you write before Galen's Way up to now?
Well, in science fiction, I wrote Escaping Infinity, which was a Dragon Award finalist in 2017, and that's the one that got its start one day while I was listening to Hotel California, and it dawned on me that would make a great book if you could figure out why the hotel would keep you in once you walked in. How come you couldn't get back out? All that without it being a blatant ripoff of the song.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just wanted to do that. I wanted to do a sci-fi version of it, and that took a few years to iron out. Before that, the first traditionally published book I released was Reservations, and that is a political mystery thriller that's set on the Navajo reservation, a little south of where I'm living right now. It's in the Four Corners area. And I had written, ironically enough, I had written that as a screenplay back in the late 90s. And it was set on the premise of we've got a new election coming up in 2000. What if the person elected into the White House was somebody we did not want in there because they were actually put there to get to the White House by a foreign government?
Some Manchurian candidate type thing.
Yeah, similar to that.
Something along those lines, though. Yeah.
This was kind of a plot that was started back right after World War II. They sent a bunch of people over to live in the United States as Americans and then raise their kids and grandkids in politics and business, and then get into a position at some point to where they were all in government and all in major businesses, and they could just flip the whole country over.
That was scary enough it could be true.
Okay, that screenplay almost got picked up back then. It became the second book in the series, which is Betrayals. When I decided to start writing novels, I was going to write that one first. And it dawned on me the main character's story needed to be told first. And so I had to backtrack to his backstory, and that became Reservations. And that book has been really well received. Ironically enough, I've got a couple of production companies that are looking at it.
Oh, interesting.
To adapt it to film. So I'm sitting. Hollywood does not move fast. They've been talking about this for like 5 months. So, one of these years, somebody's going to write me a check, I hope.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
But until then, it's just nice that they're looking at it.
Yeah.
So that series I did the Western. I'll duck my head real quick.
Don't worry too much about it. Remember, no video.
We're audio only, but for you, that's a Western I co-wrote with my business partner James Christine, who's a great Western.
Oh yeah, been a great guest on this show too. He's a good guy.
That was our collaboration there. I've got that. I'm gonna have to look over here. I've done some sports nonfiction. The one I'm proudest of in that area is From the Fields, and that was a telling of the first 100 years of high school football in my hometown, which is Turlock, California. It was kind of because nobody had the accurate story on how the team had done over the years, and people had always talked about doing it and never did it. And I just happened to be in a position where I could devote a year and a half of my life to this project, and got it out there, and it did really well. It was never meant to be a national seller. It was really an area thing, but for Turlock and the people around that area, I've gotten a lot of great feedback on it, and a lot of people are glad that somebody finally did it, and I'm glad I was able to do that from my hometown. Something I always wanted to do.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, when you talk about feedback on books, though, what kind of? I mean, you got a specific? Do you have a specific kind of reader in mind when you write a book, or any specific? Really. No, you don't. Okay.
No, I mean, the basic thing is what I try to do is I try to tell a story that when you get done with the book, you are happy you read the book. Mm-hmm. You don't feel like you wasted your time. It's been an entertaining story. Hopefully, it gave you a few hours away from whatever troubles the real world has been throwing at you. You had a little island of peace and quiet to where you could just jump into this adventure and kind of go along on the ride with me. And really, that's the best compliment I ever get is that they read the book and they enjoyed it. And that's really all I try to do when I sit down and write a story.
Well, that's an honorable goal, if you ask me. That's along the lines of what I strive for too. Not a whole lot, really, but it's important stuff. Actually, entertainment's valuable. Yeah,
if somebody just dropped, it could be what $2.99 for an ebook, up to $15 for the paperback, whatever. They invested their money and time into this, and I want them to feel like they got their money's worth when they get done with it.
Yeah.
And for the most part, most of the, I'd say maybe 95% of the feedback has been along those lines. But you can't please everybody, so I'm not surprised that,
Yeah, you're going to get some people who wasn't for them. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just, you can't do it. There's 7 billion people on this planet.
I haven't counted in a while.
I defy anybody to get 7 billion 5-star ratings on their book. You just can't.
Nah, that'd be pretty cool if you could. That'd be a real coup, man. But then that book would be done. Everyone would have read it at that point.
I would bottle whatever I did there and sell it if I ever did that.
Yeah, well, that's also how you unite humanity into one super organism. You write the book that everyone actually somehow reads. Literally everyone.
There you go. No, I mean, but that's just, I think that's what every writer sets out to do. We're sharing a story we created, and we hope that the reader enjoyed reading it. And that's really all we should aim for.
Yeah, agreed. It's weird though, because even though that's my philosophy in general, I noticed that my books tend to be quite personal. Like how they have parts of me in them that I don't even realize I'm putting in there until it comes out. And people are like you mentioned Jim Christina earlier, but when I was on the writer's block with him, we were talking about my book Demon Scroll, and it was weird that I was like, wow, I didn't realize I put that in there. It was a lot of that sort of thing going on. Like I didn't realize this book had so many good lines, huh?
Yeah, I think that goes for all of us. We're putting ourselves into the book. We know we're putting ourselves into the book in some form, but we don't really realize just how much. And there's maybe a little. There's a character, the Del Rio character in the mystery thriller series. He arrives for a meeting. It's a breakfast meeting. He's just showed up at this town. And he doesn't want to deal with these politicians because he doesn't particularly care for politicians. That's part of me right there. And I knew I did that. But he also has a point where he orders a very light breakfast and somebody mentions it. And he's like, I don't eat right off the bat in the morning. I like to sneak up on my food. And it was after the book was out and I was kind of reading it that I realized that's me anyway. That's me right there. I do not do breakfast. You get away from me with food until about 11 o'clock in the morning. So I had not realized I had done that.
Wow. And now you've just made an enemy for life because of a breakfast style person. No, I'm just kidding.
See, no.
I'm not kidding about the enemy thing, but there you go.
Yeah, I know. It's weird how I'm like that. It's just like, my wife, bless her, when we first met, she went to make this huge breakfast. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to eat this because she's gone to this time and effort. But at the same time, I'm like, God, breakfast?
Seriously? Yeah.
So I had to wait a little bit. And down the line, I was like, okay, I'm not a breakfast person. So anyway, it's some of the little odd things that we do. I think authors find a way to get in, whether they realize it or not.
Yeah, and sometimes that can be kind of an artifact, or it can be it's not always great, but it can be really useful. It can be really add some authenticity because those little pieces, they spruce up the story just that little bit more. Yeah. Well, Richard, it's been fun having you on the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me on, and we have got to get it set up for you to come on mine.
Yes, definitely. I would love to do that, and. Yeah, sorry, go on.
Hopefully we won't have the same issue we had with our first guest, where right in the middle of the podcast, the internet said, "You're done today," and blinked out on me.
Uh-oh.
That was fun.
Just disappear.
We got her back, but it's like, this is not the way I wanted the first podcast.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's always technical difficulties. That's a word that's words we just live by on this show. But not so much that I normally notice. But then it sneaks up on you, just like you with your breakfast. Anyway, so tell people where they can find your books and stuff like that.
Go to www.sci-fi-scribe, that's SCIFI scribe.com, and everything about me as a writer, my past history, the books that are out, you can actually download my books directly from me. You can buy them from my website. You can actually order the paperback and hardcover. Some of my books are in hardcover. And if you want to really stroke my ego, you can order a paperback or a hardcover book, and I will sign it for you before it gets sent to you. So all that's there. My blog is there. The latest podcast episodes will drop there. It's kind of the Walmart of websites when it comes to me. So everything's
One-stop
there
shop.
for you in
Yeah.
one shop. Yep.
So, yeah, thanks for being on the podcast. It's been fun,
Right.
and the links will be in the show notes. Well, the one link, because there's only one. That's
link,
nice and
yeah.
convenient. So, thanks for listening, everybody. As for this podcast, you can find us at mentalcellularpublications.com. You can find my books on amazon.com in ebook or just about anywhere in print-on-demand book, though they will cost you a fair amount for the same story. But if you like to read in print, that's just what you got to deal with. Thanks for listening, everybody. Stay safe out there, and have a good week.
That tears it.